Okay, thanks everyone for coming. I'll get started in just a minute here, but I got 5 topics to hit. We'll see if I get to them all. Um, Stay tuned for later today. I'm going to be putting out some videos that aren't live. I'm going to put out my top 5 reasons that the Ukrainian coup, the top 5 ridiculous things that are going on with it. It'll be things that I talk about in my live stream, so those of you that have followed me will know a lot of what I'm discussing, but that'll be coming later today, so be sure to check that out. I've been really busy with work and things like that. I'm trying to do a lot of overtime, so your support's always appreciated. I'm not asking for money or anything like that, but if you could like and subscribe and kind of recommend me to some other people, I'd really appreciate it. So I'd be able to do this more often if I have more support. So let's just get right to it. The first thing to talk about is, of course, the coup against President Trump, the whole Ukraine situation and Schiff, and things of that nature. So I've been saying since the start of this phony Russia collusion investigation that this was the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. The fact that we had the Obama administration use what amounted to dirt paid for by the Hillary Clinton administration, sourced by the Kremlin to be able to spy on people connected to Trump's campaign, and how unbelievably out of character that is, even for as corrupt as our deep state and intel agencies are. This is the most brazen attempt that I'd seen at them trying to overthrow a president that was possibly against them. We see this doubling down and kind of happening at a more hyper pace with the Ukrainian situation. Make no mistake about it, as big of the hoax as the Russia situation is, everything in the Ukrainian situation is just that, as ridiculous as that. It's just being sped up. The media is pushing it. They act like they have something because they have a whistleblower, but we've seen the script, we've seen the information behind the scenes, so we know there's nothing to this story. But it doesn't matter because the media keeps repeating lies, as do the Democratic politicians. Now keep in mind, this is the same media and same Democrats that told us that we needed to have hearings on Capitol Hill about censoring fake news, and they have to have powers to go into the social media and control what they allow people to say because of the dangers of fake news. Yet they have no problem repeating lie after lie after lie when it comes to defending the coup against Trump. So just a couple examples. Remember when Schiff came out and he was just doing a parody when he started to read the comments from the transcript, and he inserted a bunch of stuff such as, "I'll only say this 7 times. I want you to make up dirt on Biden." All things which Trump never said. We saw the transcript. When he was called out by the Republicans, what did Schiff say? Oh, it was a parody. But then Schiff continued in his tweets to say, Trump asked them to make up dirt on Biden. No, he didn't. He never said anything like that. And then when, was it Stephanopoulos is interviewing Pelosi, he says, do you think it was bad for Schiff to make that stuff up in that hearing? And Pelosi says he didn't make anything up. So the parody, quote unquote, had the desired effect. And that is, the media and the Democrats are very shrewd in that they know people only read headlines. People don't read retractions. And so they put this information out there, and then it seeps into people's heads. They get it. People that don't necessarily have the time to look at the actual details. And then they think that's actually what's occurring. Another example of this is the business we saw yesterday with Mulvaney. So, one, if you have any credibility whatsoever, you should take everything that's supposedly being said in any of these Democratic hearings with a grain of salt. We should refuse to listen to them because they were refusing to leave the Republicans participate, and they are selectively leaking information they want. It doesn't get more corrupt or shady than this. This is when they say something's a star chamber. This is exactly what they're talking about. That it's isolated, it's kept from the public's eye, it's kept from every opposition's eye, and it's just a group of like-minded people pushing their own narrative and selectively leaking to the public and to their media mouthpieces what parts of that narrative they want. So we shouldn't pay any attention to any of it. I'm tired of every day we have another story. Oh, in testimony today. Yeah, I don't believe it. I could say the same thing. Yeah, I had a secret meeting, and here, let me leak bits of the testimony. That proves nothing, especially when we see over and over again how these lies come about. So with Mulvaney, the argument was this, that Mulvaney admitted, and this was all over the place, outlets that I follow, The Hill, it was on the Drudge Report, it was on most of the CNNs, the MSNBCs, and the report was, Mulvaney admits to a quid pro quo. He admitted that unless the Ukrainians investigated Biden, that they would withhold aid. That's not true whatsoever. In fact, he said the exact opposite of that. He said that there was no mention of Biden whatsoever. It was never on the table. There was a discussion of possibly withholding aid if Ukraine was corrupt and they didn't out corruption. But that's exactly what Obama did with the Biden administration, with Biden. Remember, the reason they say it was okay for Biden to do what he did, to extort and use a quid pro quo using $1 billion of your tax dollars in order for them to fire the prosecutor that was looking into Biden's son, they said that was okay because that was the Obama administration trying to out corruption. That's all Mulvaney said. And again, even if they would have mentioned Biden, that is still outing corruption. That's still interference into the 2016 election. That's still, if the government of Ukraine is kowtowing to the vice president of the United States in order to fire a prosecutor that was looking into his son, that's corruption. That country then is willing to stop legitimate investigations into certain people for money. That would be reason not to give that country money. We shouldn't be giving them that much money anyways. All of it's in the name of fighting the Russian boogeyman, which, how many times are we going to hear that same tune? So yeah, we saw this with Mulvaney, and this occurs over and over again, where they just say, oh, there was Sondland said damning things in the meeting. Oh, this person said damning things in the meeting. We can't release the full transcript. We'll only release 1 or 2 sentences. But trust us, that proves that Trump's guilty. Yeah, and I agree with McCarthy, April. You're absolutely right. He does need to be censored. Schiff has no business whatsoever on this committee, leading the Intel Committee. It is clear that he's biased for various reasons. We know, for example, that let's just go through some of the reasons. We know that he lied about having contact, him and his office having contact with the original whistleblower. We know that his office actually worked with the whistleblower to get them in contact with a lawyer that was connected to the Clintons and other such people. We know that they then wrote the whistleblower complaint. It wasn't just the whistleblower, aka the leaker. It was also written in conjunction with these lawyers that were pro-Hillary, anti-Trump lawyers. We know the fact, like I said, we know Schiff lied. We know that he, quote, parodied in the Intel meeting with the Intel IG. So he did all of these things. We know that Schiff did this. In addition to that, and something that was briefly mentioned, we know that Schiff actually committed the same quote-unquote crime that he's alleging Trump did. Because remember, both Schiff and Pelosi said that a quid pro quo is not necessary. So I'll go back and I'll sum up the entire story here at the end, but I just want to talk about the specifics. But let's take them at their word that a quid pro quo is not necessary. So if you followed me when this was initially coming about, I said before they announced, Pelosi officially announced the impeachment inquiry, we needed the media to focus in on them and say, what exactly are you saying could be in this transcript that would be grounds for impeachment? Because the problem is what the left and the media always do is there's no two situations that are completely analogous ever in the history of the world. Like, no matter how similar things get, there will always be slight nuances. Now, in many cases, those nuances aren't relevant to the story at hand or to the alleged crime. But that's what the media and the Democrats specialize in. They specialize in saying, oh, this situation's slightly different. So when we did it, it was okay. When the Democrats did it, it was okay. When Obama did it and Biden did it, it was okay. But when Trump does it, well, it's impeachable and it's treason and he should be in prison. So that's why it's important, and this is a lesson for all of you out there as well. When you're arguing with people, you know, and people say, oh, I think the report's going to say this about Trump. Get them on record. What exactly are you saying would be damning? Like, before it comes out. Because if you leave them come out, if you leave them make their answer after the evidence comes out, they'll adjust their answer to whatever they think the evidence says. It was just like people, I said, okay, you're going to, Mueller, right? The Mueller report. All these people on the left. Oh, Mueller's our savior. We have votive candles to Mueller. We have, it's Mueller time t-shirts. Woo, he's going to bring down Trump. Oh, Don Jr. is going to be in prison. I said, okay, so you're willing to take what the Mueller report says at face value? Yep. Well, then what happened? The Mueller report comes out and people say, well, actually, it said that, you know, they just make it up. They act like it didn't say there was no Russia collusion. They act like it didn't say that there was no proof of crimes. So that's why it was important for them to ask, because what we ended up seeing a little bit of this is Schiff and Pelosi have both said at several occasions that a quid pro quo is not necessary. So then let's think of what we're discussing here. What they're saying is, actually, you don't need to threaten to withhold something. And remember, for those of you, if you don't know what a quid pro quo is, it's basically asking for something in return, a favor. You're threatening to withhold or offering to give some sort of assistance in exchange for a favor. That's a quid pro quo. So what most people were saying is it would be illegitimate if Trump said, hey, I'm not going to give you this aid, Ukraine, unless you investigate my political opponent. That's not what occurred anyways, but that's what most people are saying would be illegitimate if it did happen. But Schiff and Pelosi are saying, no, we don't have to prove that. We just have to prove, so what? What are they saying is illegal? Asking a foreign government for help investigating an opponent is illegal. But we know that's nonsense because we know that Obama did that. That was the actual Crossfire Hurricane investigation. We know that Australian diplomats, Kremlin officials, former UK spies, our Five Eye allies in the UK, supposedly in Italy, and other places, the Obama administration worked with them trying to investigate Trump and whether or not he or his team was colluding with Russians. We know this. That's proven. No one batted an eye. Everyone said that's perfectly legitimate. Election interference is such a serious accusation that we could leave no stone unturned. So it was okay for Obama to do all this. That's what we were told. So you know they're lying at face value. But remember, Schiff himself did exactly this. Schiff believed he was on the phone with 2 Russians. And these Russians were connected to the Kremlin government. And they told him that they had nude photos of Trump in addition to other information that was embarrassing for Trump. Compromise. Remember, the original dossier with the peace story, the idea, you might think, what was the deal with this peace story? Why would that be important? The allegation is this. If the Russians have nude photos of Trump or pictures of him in sexually compromising situations, they'll then blackmail Trump and get him to do what they want, or they'll release those photos and that information. So here's Adam Schiff saying, oh, the Russians actually do have nude photos of Trump. Yes, please. You'll be in contact with my office. He sent his staffers to further contact to try to get this information. That's exactly what he's accused Trump of doing. Exactly. Trying to work with foreign government officials in order to get evidence into possible crimes of his opponent. Except he wasn't even looking at possible crimes. He was trying to get nude photos of Trump. Something that that's not even a crime. It's okay for Trump to be nude. Nonetheless, this was all a joke. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't Schiff attempting to get this. So Schiff was actually doing worse than what he accuses Trump of doing. So by Schiff's own definition, he broke the law that he's claiming that Trump broke. Yeah, I mean, Matt, I don't think that the Democrats are dumb or the media are dumb. Or the intel agencies. It's a very shrewd. They were foolhardy. They assumed Hillary would win, and that's why we are in a unique position we are. The reason that I wanted Trump to win, and people have heard me say this, the number one reason was to out this sort of deep state corruption and to prove that the media is just their mouthpiece, and that at the highest levels at the establishment Republican and Democratic parties, that they're basically the same. They're all part of the establishment. They're all part of this deep state cabal. That includes unelected intelligence officials. That includes wealthy contributors. They're the ones that really shape the policy. And they will never allow us to have people in positions of power that would go against their interest. Trump seemed to be a potential outsider. That's why I wanted him in. And he's, regardless if he's done it intentionally or unintentionally, he has outed that corruption in a more in-your-face way than ever seen before. Before, it was always behind the scenes type things. Now we see the corruption's totally out in the open. The media is spinning this corruption. We see this coup occurring in public. We see the coup occurring in public every day. So I hope that this wakes more people up, and I hope that Trump's able to overcome this, which I'll get to more of later. So yeah, Schiff actually broke the same law that he's accusing Trump of, but not just in that way. And so far be it from me to be given "I told you so," but I do have to take a moment to brag about myself. I do think that oftentimes I see things that other people that you don't really see on the media, or even Trump defenders saying, and then it ends up coming true. Like, I'll give you an example of this. I was one of the only people I saw to actually read the 302s, the FBI's 302s on Flynn. And I said from the get-go, look, it doesn't look like he lied as soon as this came out. Now we're seeing that that's actually what's happening thanks to Flynn's excellent attorney. They're getting all sorts of evidence that show that he was pressured into accepting that deal and that there was evidence withheld and other things of that nature. And so he's now fighting those charges. One of the things I talked about, and you can check out my video, it's from mid-September, I did about Schiff, a staffer of Schiff's, going over to the Ukraine. Now, one of the things I said that I also didn't hear people saying was, I found it incredibly strange that the whistleblower report kept going out of its way to say that this information in the report itself was not confidential, wasn't classified. Almost like he was setting up a defense, he or she was setting up a defense because they knew that that information had been shared with people in ways that would be illegitimate if it was classified. So whether it be public officials or people like Adam Schiff, I specifically said. We now know that's exactly what happened. Now, I also said around this time that we saw at the exact same time that the whistleblower was formulating his complaint, that Adam Schiff actually had a staffer that was sent to the Ukraine. That trip was paid for by the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council is funded by George Soros. So, this all sounds confusing, but just look at it like this. You have, at the same time that we now know that this whistleblower is working with Schiff's staff to formulate the whistleblower complaint, at the same time, Schiff is sending one of his staffers to the Ukraine. That's being paid for by the Atlantic Council and George Soros, and it turns out part of the funding was from Burisma itself, it seems. Burisma, again, is this corrupt oligarch's gas company that Hunter Biden worked for. I said, and I didn't see anyone else say this, I said, we need to subpoena all of the conversations and calls between both Schiff and his staffer and anyone else he talked to in the Ukraine. Now it's being reported, which again, I feel I was ahead of the curve on this, but it's being reported today that actually Schiff's staffer was in fact meeting with witnesses to Trump's alleged transcript and phone call and the alleged crimes that Schiff's claiming that Trump committed. Now, does anyone see the problem with this? This is exactly what Schiff is accusing Trump of, right? Schiff is sending his team to get evidence from foreign governments on his opponent, Trump, into crimes that possibly Trump committed. Schiff said a quid pro quo is not necessary. He said that the mere act of trying to get evidence of crimes from a foreign government on your political opponent is a crime. We now know that's what Schiff was doing at the exact same time that the whistleblower was filing this complaint. Do you see how ridiculous this is? What were the conversations between Schiff's staffers and the Ukrainian officials that he was meeting? Did he say, hey, do you have information on what the call was between Trump and Zelensky? That's the exact same crime that he's accusing Trump of committing. And this is the recurring theme that you see through everything. For 3 years, the media and the Democrats have told you from day one, Trump needs to be impeached. He committed serious crimes. I've had an outstanding challenge to anyone, other than claims of annulments. Is there anyone out there that could show me any crime that's been accused of Trump or anyone on his team that hasn't also been committed in an equal or worse way by the Democrats or the intel agency? Every single crime. Lying to the FBI. Supposedly Flynn did that. I showed how that wasn't the case. But we know for a fact, based on Strzok's released text, that Mills and Abedin lied to him. Because they said that they thought that they had no knowledge of Hillary's server until after her 10 years Secretary of State. We know from released emails of theirs that's not true. We know that FBI agents thought Hillary herself lied when she said she thought the C meant alphabetical order. Or how about failing to register as a foreign lobbyist? They go after Manafort. He worked exactly with Podesta in the exact same supposed crime. He worked with the Podesta group, and the Podesta group is allowed to retroactively file paperwork. It's every single crime. Now it's, oh, well, Trump tried to talk to foreign countries and get evidence on his opponent. We know the Obama administration did that. We know that Schiff did that. We know that 3 Democratic senators did that. Leahy, Menendez, and Dick Durbin. None of this is discussed. And this is the problem. This is what I want to talk about, and I'll get in. This will transition me to the Syria situation that I want to talk about. Now, look, I'll probably be doing a live stream tomorrow where I'll focus, again, more on the specific Ukraine scandal. And like I said, I'll be doing a video on that later tonight, hopefully, unless I get busy. But what I want to focus on here is the danger and the power of the control of the public narrative that comes from the establishment, and particularly the establishment left. Now, I've been saying on this channel since I started, I don't know the vocabulary to discuss this, so I just put it in my own way. I talk about the cultural institutions of power. And what I mean by this is our institutions that kind of have the power to shape public dialogue. And it's not just things you would think. So yes, of course, the media would be one of those. But it's not just that. Academia would be one of those as well. Then you would also have things like the entertainment industry. And you might think, like, wait a minute, what does the media and academia have to do with the entertainment industry? Because these are all groups that have the power to influence us and to control what our conversations are about, to control the public discourse. Silicon Valley's another. I would argue those 4 institutions, more than any other, shape what our public dialogue is. And they're almost all controlled by the establishment left and the establishment Democrats. That is an incredible power. And it's one of the things I say when I meet Republicans in this area, they seem to think it's a foregone conclusion that Trump's just going to win in a landslide. He may. I don't know. I am not willing at this point to make a prediction, especially knowing how shady and how powerful these groups are that are opposing him. Who knows what could happen before? I mean, there could be violence. There could be physical attacks on Trump. There could be all sorts of shady tricks, accusers that come out at the last minute. That's a favorite of the establishment Democrats. So I have no idea what will happen. But I don't understand the people that are so confident that Trump will win, because we can't, like you said, Matt, we shouldn't assume that these people that are engaged in this coup, the establishment left, the establishment Democrats, we shouldn't assume they're stupid or they're not effective. They are very effective. It was a poor decision for them to be as transparent as they were going into the 2016 election, but that's because they were overconfident and assumed Hillary would win. That puts us in a unique time where I don't know if Trump isn't able to out this corruption that we'll ever see another chance like this in my lifetime. Every candidate that will be put up will be a pre-approved deep state candidate that will ever win the nomination. Don't believe me, people on the left? Because one of the topics I'm going to talk about today is Tulsi Gabbard, and how we have Hillary Clinton out there today saying that she's the pick of the Russians. I told this to the people on the left. I said, you're cheering for this coup. Can't you see how short-sighted that is? You don't like Trump, so you don't care. You'll back the intel agencies and their coup and their war against Trump. But can't you see that's the exact same thing that will be done by any candidate on the left that isn't an establishment neo-lib neocon? And so we'll be left with warmonger banker supporters. Sure, Elizabeth Warren will pay lip service, but she's a hack. She'll do what the establishment wants. She'll do what the intel agencies want. Someone like Tulsi, who, by the way, I have a lot of negative things to say about when I get to her, she seems to be anti-war. I've been saying from the get-go, that was the death knell for her. How dare she suggest that things in Syria weren't as they seem. That means that establishment Democrats would never allow her to win. Nor would the intel agencies. Hey, good to be back, Dib. Thanks. So, with this power that control our public discourse, it's immense. And even people like me and other people that are incredibly talented and righteous and are trying to stand up to this coup and to this deep state, we're still a victim of that. We still end up talking about what they're talking about. For example, Ukraine. I led off with that. Why? It's a non-story, basically. But because of the power of all these institutions of power in shaping our public discourse, it's seeping in. It's becoming something. The story is the story. In other words, the fact that they push it and they manufacture it so well means that it becomes a story. Then people like me have to defend or argue as to why this story is stupid. Meanwhile, we never go on the offensive and show exactly how terrible they are in the first place. And so that's something that I've been talking about that I think even Trump's defenders are making a huge mistake of. Before Trey Gowdy, or before Matt Gaetz, or Jim Jordan, or Mark Meadows, or Devin Nunes, or Sean Hannity, or Rudy Giuliani, before they answer any questions about what Mulvaney said or what Sondland's going to say, they should be starting off with several facts. One, we know 3 Democratic senators sent a letter that did exactly what Trump claimed. Second, we know, no matter what you say, that Biden did use a quid pro quo, and just because you think it was legitimate, it doesn't matter. It still warrants an investigation. Third, we know for a fact that in a sworn affidavit, the prosecutor that was fired said he was fired because he was told to bury the investigation into Biden's son. Fourth, we know that Biden's son's own lawyers said that Joe Biden lied, that actually the prosecutor that he forced to be fired wasn't corrupt and actually was investigating Burisma and Hunter Biden. Those are facts that should be started with, period. I don't care how many times someone on the left, the George Stephanopoulos, the Anderson Coopers, the Jake Tappers, the Rachel Maddows, the Chuck Schumers, Pelosi's, Adam Schiff say, it's been debunked. It's debunked. Hunter Biden didn't do anything. Joe Biden didn't do anything. No, it hasn't. Just saying something's debunked doesn't mean that it's debunked. Now, look at again just how they shape this discourse. Remember, let's go back to what the allegation is. Not just, I've already talked you through how Pelosi and Schiff's standard that, just trying to get evidence from a foreign country on your political opponent itself is a crime. I've already gone through how we've seen that Obama did that, the 3 Democratic senators did that, Schiff himself did that. So clearly, they're not equally applying that. But the idea that a quid pro quo, right, that's somehow the crime. And that's what people are trying to say. That's what the push is for. Because no matter what Pelosi and Schiff are saying, they know the only way to really get public support for saying that Trump did something really terrible is to prove some sort of quid pro quo. So, what they're trying to say then is that Trump inferred a quid pro quo. And that's what all these, behind the scenes... Thanks, Matt. That's what all these behind the scenes meetings are about. They're trying to get evidence. They're trying to get Mulvaney. See, according to this witness that heard the transcript or heard through a friend of a friend of a friend that heard the transcript, this was a quid pro quo. That's what they're trying to say. But there's 2 parts to this. Because clearly, all of these media and the Dems can't just say it's a quid pro quo and that's illegal. Why can't they say that? Because we know that's what Biden and the Obama administration did. They've admitted to a quid pro quo. So there have to be 2 parts of it. One, it has to be a quid pro quo. And second, that quid pro quo had to be for a reason that is somehow unacceptable. So with Biden and the Obama administration, and don't forget that, this isn't just a Joe Biden thing. This is the entire Obama administration. Biden admitted in his speech where he bragged about this to the Council of Foreign Relations. He admitted it, right? He said, I said, we're not going to give you this $1 billion unless you fire this guy. They said, you're not the president. Obama is. Biden said, call him. He'll back me up on this. Which is true. It's clear that Biden didn't have the authority to do this without Obama's blessing. So this is an entire administration scandal. So the Obama administration and Biden issued a quid pro quo. We know that. It's admitted. Okay? The media and the Dems and the establishment all say that that was okay. Do we have proof that Trump issued a quid pro quo? No, we don't. People are trying to infer. They're trying to say, well, if you read between the lines, there was a quid pro quo. But that's garbage. Again, I've read you on my live stream before the CNN defense of that letter that the 3 Democratic senators sent in May of 2018. They actually say, CNN's defense is, well, you would have to try to read between the lines to say that these senators were offering a quid pro quo, and we don't think that's legitimate. But that's exactly what CNN and the media and the Democrats are doing to Trump. So it just proves they're hypocrites. All of this bluster is nonsense. But we clearly have a quid pro quo with Obama and Biden. We don't have that with Trump. So now to the next step. Was it for nefarious means? That's the argument that these people are making. The quid pro quo was okay from Obama and Biden because it was to out corruption. Therefore, and I say this all the time, when it comes to the Democrats, when it comes to the establishment, you have to prove 100% that they're guilty of something. Or else they'll just scream, debunked, debunked, debunked. A 1% chance that possibly they're not guilty is enough for all of them to say, oh, that's proof they're not guilty. But it's the exact opposite when it comes to Trump. A 1% chance that something looks bad, that's proof to them that he's guilty. Do you see how that double standard works? And so with Biden, they're willing to say, yes, of course we know this prosecutor was looking into his son, but we trust Biden. He's a great guy. And so, all of Obama's allies and George Soros's groups and people in the EU that are connected to, that were allies of Obama and Soros, they all wanted this prosecutor fired. So it's totally cool. No questions asked. And if you want it investigated, you're a conspiracy theorist. This has all been debunked. That's what they said. They assume the motivations of Biden and Obama were pure. That's an assumption. We don't have proof of that. That's just an assumption. How do I know we don't have proof? Because there hasn't been an investigation. That's why I've been arguing, and again, I haven't heard anyone else talk about this like me. We don't need to prove that Joe or Hunter Biden are guilty of anything. All we need to prove is that there is evidence that is worth investigating. If there's reason to have an investigation, that proves the entire argument of impeachment of Trump is nonsense. Because he had every right and, in fact, an obligation as the president to investigate corruption of this magnitude. At the highest office, the presidency and vice presidency, using $1 billion US tax dollars to extort in what could have been for their personal benefit to stop an investigation into Hunter Biden. Now, you might say, but is there proof that that's exactly what happened? Not definitively, but there's evidence that warrants investigating. That's all we have to prove, and Trump should be looking into that. And I've argued before, that on its own right is reason to investigate, but this is also tantamount to 2016 election interference. Because election interference could take the form of trying to get dirt on your opponent, but it also could take the form of trying to bury dirt into yourself or your family. And that's what Biden did, allegedly. And the end result was the investigation into his son's company was buried. After supposedly, and I've talked about this all before, but supposedly, that now it's finally, once they got this prosecutor fired, things would be dealt with correctly. And the investigation was buried after that. But anyways, the point is, the Democrats and the media and the intel agencies and all of their allies and the people that are controlling the public discourse just assume that the motivations of Joe Biden and Barack Obama were benevolent. They assume they were good. Now, what do they do with Trump? Do we have any proof that his motivation was to try to win the 2020 election, that that's what this was about? Do we any proof whatsoever? Could you not make a compelling case that this is Trump trying to investigate corruption in the Ukraine? Particularly because even in the transcript, Biden was an afterthought. He first talked about election meddling in 2016 from Ukrainians. He talked about places like CrowdStrike. He talked about ending corruption. Couldn't you make a compelling case that Trump just wanted to make sure that he wasn't giving money to a place that was corrupt? He wanted them to investigate election interference? Remember, we know, and I've showed you that Financial Times. Go back and check out my video on this. We know for a fact. Everybody cites this 2017 Politico article that talks about how we know the Ukraine was working with the DNC, an agent named Alexandra Chalupa, to get dirt on Trump and use that for the 2016 election, to interfere in the election. But no one talks about the 2016 Financial Times article that I mention all the time. This article shows specifically Financial Times, a mainstream outlet in the United States. It's interviewing Lyshenko, who's a politician in the Ukraine that works with their NABU. The same NABU that ended up getting the investigation into Hunter Biden's company. The same NABU that was alleged to have buried investigations at the behest of the Obama and Biden administration. So they had a working relationship with Obama and Biden, and Obama and Biden would say, hey, bury this investigation, and they'd say, okay, sirs. That's the group that ended up burying the Hunter Biden investigation. Strange, isn't it? But anyways, we know that group, we know that they were working with Lyshenko to release this black ledger on Paul Manafort, and this Financial Times article says Lyshenko's admitting, saying, yes, we hate Trump's policies. We're afraid that he's pro-Russia. We'll do anything we can to stop him from being elected. That's election interference. They're admitting. The date of that article is August 2016. That's months before, right before the 2016 election. That's admitted. The media doesn't want to talk about this. The Democrats don't want to talk about this. Acosta just said last night that it was a conspiracy, that it's been debunked that Ukrainians interfered in the election. They admitted it. Now stack that up to anything that we know about Russian interference. Do we have Russians admitting to interfering? No, not at all. Now all of a sudden the admission of someone like Lyshenko, that's not good enough. Oh, it's been debunked. Who debunked it? Where? Someone show me. Show me the article. We have them publicly admitting it to the mainstream media before the election. But then all the media for 3 years pretended like, and the Democrats and the intel agencies and academia and Hollywood, the entertainment industry, and Silicon Valley, they all acted like election interference was the biggest deal possible. Many called it an act of war when they thought that it was helping Trump. Our elections aren't safe. We need to have meetings on Capitol Hill. What can we do to protect our elections? No stone must be left unturned to protect our elections and to investigate election interference. But the fact that Ukraine's admitting to interfering, which worked, by the way, it forced Manafort to step down. The fact that they admitted to interfering, working with the DNC to take down Trump during the election, suddenly that's not worth investigating. So Trump, someone who himself has been investigated for 3 years and has been told, even though he knew he was innocent, well, you have to suffer through this investigation because the allegation of election interference is so severe that it means you just have to suffer through this. Why wouldn't he be well within his rights to say, okay, I shut up and I took it for 3 years. I might have complained on Twitter and this and that, but the investigation went off without a hitch. Mueller even admitted it. I was found to have not committed any crime. Now, let's look at the actual admitted election interference that helped the DNC. Why isn't he within his rights to say that? Now, the point is this all sounds confusing. We don't know what the motivations were unless we could see inside the mind or the heart of Trump or Biden as to why they said what they said. Why is it then that all of the media and the entertainment industry and academia and Silicon Valley and the intel agencies and the Democrats, they all look at what Trump do and say, we are making the assumption this was about him trying to get interference for the 2020 election. But they look at Biden and they say, his reasons for doing this were totally credible and totally legit. And this is where I see Republicans and people defending Trump going wrong. One, none of them are articulating carefully why you don't have to prove that Joe or Hunter Biden are guilty. All you have to do is prove that there's evidence that warrants investigating. If there's evidence that warrants an investigation, then that proves there's no case for impeachment of Trump. Because he's doing his job, investigating potential crimes at the highest level of our government. Not only is there evidence, as I've articulated, But the mere fact that we have a vice president that admitted to using a quid pro quo, to extorting a country with $1 billion of your tax dollars to get fired the prosecutor who happened to be looking into his son, that's it. That situation on its own has such a potential for corruption that it warrants an investigation. Period. The conflict of interest is so high that we should at least have an official investigation. Not to mention the additional evidence we have on top of it, like Shokin's sworn testimony, like the testimony of Hunter Biden's company's lawyers that said that Joe Biden was wrong. He was spreading disinformation, that Shokin wasn't corrupt. So that's the first area that I feel that Trump defenders are lacking on. Then the second is this idea of, we just assume, well, if they somehow can prove that there's a quid pro quo, that proves that Trump should be impeached. And you see people like Ben Shapiro saying this, who sucks, by the way. Shapiro sucks. Smart dude, I agree with him on some things. I'd love to sit down and talk to him. But he's an anti-Trumper. The only parts of Trump that he likes is anything he's doing to help Israel. But you see these Republicans that say, well, if they prove it was a quid pro quo, this is impeachment. But they didn't think that about Biden. They were okay with Biden's quid pro quo. And you see this, I've even seen people like Scott Adams and others say, well, there's no proof. Scott Adams, who I really like, says he doesn't see the actual evidence or proof for what Biden doing being corrupt, of withholding this $1 billion. There is no more evidence of Trump's corruption if he did a quid pro quo than there was of Biden's. In fact, there's way more evidence of Biden's corruption. Why was everyone just okay with it? Well, because other countries said this guy was corrupt. So what? There are probably all sorts of corrupt prosecutors in the Ukraine. All sorts of corrupt officials in the Ukraine. Isn't it a little coincidental that only the one that was investigating Joe Biden's son was forced to be fired? Isn't it even more coincidental that then the investigation went to the agency that was the ally of Biden and Obama, the NABU, and they basically buried the investigation into Hunter Biden? So I'm sorry, I don't buy this argument that we have to assume if there was a quid pro quo, then that's it for Trump. But it was okay for Biden to do it. Ridiculous. It is a ridiculous double standard. Once more, just like with this alleged crime of Trump or one of his associates, we see that the Democrats committed the very same crime, except more. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dib. And, Ben's a hypocrite on many ways. Ben Shapiro's someone who's going to run for office in the future. That's what's going on. Or he's interested in his personal media empire. Because he's constantly trying to do things that keep him in the good graces of the establishment media. For example, when Roseanne Barr said what she said about Valerie Jarrett, he said, yeah, she should be fired. That's inexcusable. But anytime someone on the left says something, he says, well, context matters and blah, blah, blah. Now, you could take that stance. That's what I did. I didn't want to see Trudeau fired for blackface, or Northam in Virginia, or insert Kathy Griffin, whatever. I didn't want to see any of them fired for that stuff. But I didn't want to see Roseanne fired either. Ben's a hypocrite who thinks he's scoring brownie points when he says, there's this idea that you come off as more reasonable if you're harder on your own side. And I get that. To some extent, I'm like that as well. But he's constantly, you can tell his motivations are, he doesn't like Trump. He wants him out of there. He's a Romney guy, right? He talks about, 2012 Romney. Yeah, real cool there, Ben. So, but that's the corruption. We see that, as always, never forget, every time you hear these, we know that Obama worked with foreign governments to try to get evidence on crimes Trump may have committed. We know that 3 Democratic senators sent letters to the Ukraine doing exactly what they're alleging Trump of doing. Almost it is incredible how similar that letter is to the transcript of Trump's call. I don't think Trump's call or that letter are a crime. But if you think Trump's call was a crime, how do you not even want to investigate the letter from the 3 Democratic senators? We know that Schiff tried to get evidence from foreigners on Trump. So all of this is just a dog and pony show. And the fact that it's being conducted behind closed doors, where they won't allow Republicans in, is just more proof of that it's a sham. The fact that Pelosi announced an impeachment inquiry before she even saw the transcript, knowing that the transcript was going to be released the next day, she still announced an impeachment inquiry. It proves that it's all garbage. It's all a sham. The people that believe this, the question is, and I'm sure there's people in both of these camps, do they know that they're liars, or do they lie so often that they believe it? I mean, and I'll get to some of the Project Veritas videos here later, but when you see the CNN people behind the scenes, I imagine it's similar at the New York Times or MSNBC or in, DNC staffers' rooms. Some of them believe their lies. Jeff Zucker believes his lies. He actually believes, oh no, what these Democratic senators did was totally legitimate. Oh, Biden's been exonerated. It's been debunked that him or his son did anything wrong. They believe that. It's not rational. There's no evidence for it. Their hatred of a man is so strong that they're willing to suspend reality. They're willing to sacrifice their integrity and become total hypocrites. Now, a lot of them, Zucker probably one of them, he understands CNN is now the mouthpiece for the establishment, for the intel agencies. Remember when CNN was telling you couldn't look at the WikiLeaks stumps, it was against the law, you had to go to them? Remember when they told you that to even question Comey or people in the FBI, the leadership of the FBI, was anti-American and hurting our country and putting lives in danger? You remember that? I'm old enough to remember when CNN and all the other news agencies were ashamed, supposedly, after the Iraq War. They said, oh, we're sorry. We were lied to by Bush and the intel agencies. We'll never let it happen again. We'll ask the hard questions next time. Now, 10 years later, they're telling you, not only will we not ask the hard questions, but if you ask them, you're hurting the country. And if Trump asks them, he should be impeached. I say this all the time now. We, us, you guys listening, people like me, online people on YouTube, most of which aren't making any money. This isn't a career. It's something we do because we enjoy it and because we like our country. We're the people holding truth to power. What are the media? The media are burying truth for the powerful. That's what they are. They are just the official propagandists for the establishment, for the deep state. And that doesn't have to mean people in smoky rooms, skull and bones, Illuminati. I'm talking, you could see their faces. Comey, Brennan, Clapper. Hillary Clinton. You see them all. They're on their networks now. That's unbelievable. How can you trust these news agencies? I mean, wasn't that the job of the news? To investigate? To make sure that these powerful groups, unelected bureaucrats with the power to literally upend your life, to take away all of your rights to privacy, rights to free speech, rights to freedom? They were supposed to be, and they talk about this all the time when they say Trump's attacking the press. And the press is so important because, we're the last bulwark for people to understand what's going on. And we stick up for the people and make sure that the powerful aren't abusing them. Yes, that's true. That's what the press is supposed to do. That's why the press is important. We don't have that. We haven't for 30 years. And people made the mistake of thinking that there were groups, some press on the right, and that was worth cheering for, like the Drudge Report, or like Fox News. Now, let me just say, as a brief caveat, always when I'm complaining about an agency, I do give room that there could be decent people within that agency. So, for example, at Fox, I do like Tucker. I do think Hannity's been right on this. I do like, some of their guests, like Bongino, Greg Jarrett, John Solomon's fantastic. But the network as a whole, everyone says, it's the Republicans and the other's the Democrat. No, it's the establishment Republicans. We saw with Shep Smith. We saw with Chris Wallace. They all repeat all of these lies that are coming out of the Democratic and the establishment mouthpieces. The Drudge Report. I can count at least 6 times in the past 2 weeks that their headline, the top thing on the Drudge Report, ended up being a lie. It's all in on impeachment for Trump. Now, it could be for financial reasons because the Drudge made his bones on impeachment during the Clinton administration. But nonetheless, don't be taken in by this garbage. Hannity, yeah. I mean, I think Hannity's been very good on the Russia hoax. But I also think, I don't know that Hannity would stick up for a Democrat that was a victim of a coup like this. And that I don't like. I could be wrong. Tucker to me seems like someone that would call, I mean, he's definitely biased, we all are. But he would stick up for a Democrat. I mean, you see him all the time. He says like he's for Elizabeth Warren's when she talks about big tech and the need to break up some of these tech places. So I truly believe Tucker would say, if this was occurring under the Obama administration, would have said, yeah, this is unacceptable. I don't know that Hannity would have. But anyways. But that's the problem. We allow these people that are corrupt. They're just the mouthpiece for the establishment, for the intel agencies, for the deep state, and we allow them to control the narrative. And so we're constantly playing defense. No, what Trump did wasn't impeachable. It wasn't impeachable. It wasn't impeachable. No. And we're not saying, look at your crimes. Look what Comey did. Look what Brennan did. Look what Clapper did. Look at what those 3 Democratic senators did. Look at what Joe Biden and Barack Obama did. We're not talking about any of that. And it's transparent to me. As someone who was in debate, I don't consider myself an expert by any means. And I would say that, debate, I was more like, it sounds lame to say it like that. There's kind of more a scientific way to debate and then more of a gut feeling way to debate. And I was definitely more of the gut feeling type. Some of the people I met were incredibly intelligent, like perfect SAT scores, photographic memories. They beat me on the technicalities of what was going on in debate, but where I could hang with them was a gut feeling of understanding the human connection, that you have a human judge, and understanding that I could lose 9 out of 10 arguments. I just had to argue why that one argument I won was the most important one. And things like that. But what are the things, you pick up on little things. So when someone knows they're wrong, they tend to get, what's the word I'm looking for? Hyperbolic, and like, they act like it's undignified to even question. Oh, it's been debunked. This has just been debunked. Sir, I'm not going to allow you to repeat these lies. How many times have we seen CNN or MSNBC do that when you start talking about Joe or Hunter Biden? Who was it? CNN actually cut away from one of Trump's rallies when he started talking about Hunter Biden to say that these were all lies that have been debunked. No, they're not. Debunked by who? They literally haven't done anything. They ignore the evidence and just say it's been debunked. Why? The only thing I've seen them say why it's been debunked is, well, because the IMF and European Union leaders said that Shokin was corrupt. So therefore Biden wanting Shokin fired was legitimate. That's not debunking. You saying that a bunch of Obama allies agreed with Obama wanting to fire a guy, that's not proof of anything. Again, I've said this over and over. That would be the equivalent of us that are defending Trump against this coup saying, well, Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Rudy Giuliani and Boris Johnson, they all say that Trump was well within his rights to do this. So there we go. It's all debunked now. People would say, of course those people said that. They're allies of Trump. So we need to do a better job. And this is where the Republicans that aren't the deep state collaborators like the Romneys or the McCains or Jeff Flakes or whatever, but the actual legitimate ones, this is where they go wrong. I've tried to reach out and communicate. I'll do it for free. Send me on these shows. Let me talk to Jake Tapper. I could do it in a polite way. I'd make him look like a fool. But no, instead they just play defense over and over again. So we'll see. Hopefully the IG report comes out soon, and that'll give us some offense to show just how corrupt the very people, the CIA, the FBI, all these people at the leadership there that are accusing Trump. Oh, it shook as a grown adult. I was shaken by Trump's phone call with Ukraine, says random intel official. Please. Those same groups are the ones that we know were illegally getting FISA warrants. We're setting up the Russia hoax from the get-go. But now we should believe them. We should believe them now. And by the way, as I transition to Syria, the first thing I'll say on this is, why in God's name, if you're like Dan Crenshaw, for example. I like Dan Crenshaw. But Crenshaw and many other Republicans that supported Trump with the coup going on in him, with the Russia hoax, they're against his decision in Syria. Where are they getting their information? Where's Dan Crenshaw or Mitt Romney or any of the Democrats? Where do they get their information about what's going on in Syria? Are they themselves on the ground there? Are they talking to people? No. They're getting it from our intel agencies. Why would I trust the same group that is engaged in a coup to overthrow the president, then say, oh, okay, and also this is the situation on the ground in Syria? I never understood that. I thought it was hilarious when all the time you hear people say, remember when the Democrats, this was a big talking point, Trump should be impeached, he should be removed from office. He trusted Putin over his own intel agencies. Yes, so would I if I was Trump. Would you trust a bunch of agencies that were led by people that were trying to overthrow you, that were talking about wearing wires to get you on tape to try to get you thrown out of office, that were leaking to the press to try to get special counselors to get you put out of office, that were meeting together before you even heard about the dossier, talking about how they needed to record what you said as potential evidence of your wrongdoing later? Would you trust those people? No, not that I would trust Vladimir Putin either. He's as corrupt as anyone. But at least he isn't nakedly trying to overthrow Trump from office, like the heads of the FBI, CIA, etc. But no, we have to trust him on Syria. Trust him on Syria. I mean, yeah, they were wrong the first time when they said that it was Assad that gassed his people. And then Mattis had to come out like 6 months after Trump ordered the bombing on Syria to say, well, we still don't have definitive proof it was Assad. Then the second time when the White Helmets reported it, it turns out now that international journalists, real ones, went there on the ground, and it turns out that it looks like that gas attack was faked and never happened. Yet it led to bombing. Our intel agency said both of those were real. Just like they said WMDs in Iraq. Just like they said we had to go into Libya. Just like they said we had to overthrow the Shah. Just like they said we had to support Castro. And on and on. Just like they said we had to support the Mujahideen that became the Taliban. They're wrong every single time. They're not wrong. They know what they're doing. That's the plan. Never-ending war. More money for the military-industrial complex. War is good. It helps them line their pockets. When we're involved in these foreign countries, it makes it easier to wash money so people like Hunter Biden could get $80,000 a year. There are reports that Joe Biden himself may have got $900,000 from Burisma. How does Nancy Pelosi and people like her that have been in office that are supposedly making less than $200,000 a year, sitting there for 20, 30 years, and yet their net worth's hundreds of millions of dollars? Where are they getting the money? Well, it's easier to wash that money overseas. So we need to be involved in it. It's all about personal gain. Look, there's only two ways of looking at it. Either our intel agencies and the people that are controlling our foreign policy are literally the most inept, dumbest people ever to exist when it comes to trying to decide issues of foreign policy, because every single time it backfires, every time. Or they're getting exactly what they want. See, when you prop up the Mujahideen in the 70s, Yes, you get the immediate benefit of they interfere with Russia and the Soviet Union, which is good. But then you also get the long-term benefit of these people become your boogeyman 2 generations from that. Which is exactly what happened. Over and over, we see that's the case. So no, I'm sorry. I don't believe them this time about, well, this time we got to stay for the Kurds. They lied to us and said there weren't boots on the ground in Syria. There were. We financed groups like Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda in Syria. Groups that actually attack the Kurds and are attacking the Kurds now. We gave weapons to people that are now attacking the Kurds. Not just the Turks, by the way, but also Al-Nusra, other revolutionaries and rebels that are actually Islamic extremists and terrorists. We armed those people. Now, you might know, if you try to get in an airplane, you have to go through all sorts of searching of your private self. Because we were told the biggest threat to us is Islamic terrorism. Yet somehow, over and over, in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan, somehow, over and over again, we end up arming these very same Islamic rebels. How is that? They're the biggest threat here, but in Syria, they help us. It makes no sense. The whole situation is garbage. Don't believe anyone that's outraged about it. At all. First off, Congress never voted to declare war. They still have that option. Declare war. Then you take the power away from Trump. Why won't you do it? Secondly, almost all the Republican and Democrats condemned Trump when he talked harshly of NATO and said that it was basically an outdated alliance. Now they're saying one of our NATO allies, Turkey, are evil and they're going to wipe out our allies, the Kurds. Why are we allied with people we think are bloodthirsty maniacs that are killing innocent people? Why would we be allied with them? Not just supporting them in a conflict, actual alliances. You know, the founding fathers talked often about this. We should have free trade with everyone, but alliances with no one. Because the idea, the definition of an alliance is that if your country that you're allied with is attacked, you are now obligated to use your resources and military to defend them. That's the situation we're currently in with Turkey. If the Kurds would get backed by the Syrians and attack Turkey, right? So here's the official story, what we're being told. Turkey, bloodthirsty, they're attacking the Kurds. So if the Kurds somehow get armed, somehow get a defense, and they come back and fight Turkey, and then actually take the fight to Turkey, we are now obligated to defend Turkey from the Kurds because we're in an alliance with Turkey. Do you see how stupid this is? Meanwhile, we have 50 tactical nuclear weapons stationed in Turkey. Now, supposedly, how long has this situation in Syria been going on? At least the extent of Trump's presidency and into Obama's presidency. Let's just say 2014, 2015. 5 years, we'll say? 4 or 5 years? The situation in Syria has been what it is. Us backing the Kurds, trying to fight ISIS, right? Now, presumably for that whole time, all of the people that knew if we pull our troops out, Turkey will go after the Kurds. They knew that then. Yet for 5 years, they never said a word about us giving military aid to Turkey, us giving economic aid to Turkey, us stationing tactical nuclear weapons in Turkey. Now, why is that? If you thought, look, we have to have our children, our young people have to be in a war zone in Syria, in part to make sure that the Kurds aren't killed by Turkey. And that's been that way for 4 years. Why in God's name wasn't everyone that's outraged at Trump pulling those troops out? Why hadn't they been for 4 years saying, we need to stop supporting Turkey? We need to do what we can now. Lindsey Graham, what was Dan Crenshaw? These are Republicans. What was the plan? Leave the troops there forever? Were you ever going to get around to dealing with Turkey, who want to kill the Kurds like you're saying? Or were you just going to say, we'll just keep giving Turkey weapons. As long as our troops are dying there to protect the Kurds, no big deal. It's always some sort of excuse, isn't it? Oh, we can't pull out here. We have to leave our troops in Afghanistan. If we pull our troops out, then bad stuff will happen. Sorry, the troops just have to stay there forever. I don't see Romney's kids over there. And yes, someone like Crenshaw that's for that, he did go overseas and fight. He lost an eye. And I would never dishonor his service. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him on this. It is the goal of the warmonger establishment, the intel agencies, to keep troops overseas like this forever. What happened to the left? I thought they were the party of anti-war. As soon as it's Trump trying to sue for peace, all of a sudden now they're pro-war. You know, you hear these things, like it's like a cliche and you roll your eyes. People say, Trump could cure cancer and the Democrats will be mad. Trump tries to have peace and the Democrats are furious. Is that the only area of the world that we should have troops in? Do we not have allies like in Africa? Aren't there terrible terrorist groups in Africa? Boko Haram and stuff? Does that mean we should have troops in every country in Africa to make sure Boko Haram doesn't kill locals or people that have allied with us? Same in, Libya, I guess, would be one of those. Got to stay in Afghanistan forever. Got to stay in Iraq forever. Right? Better be in India in case Pakistan wants to do something, etc., etc. It's ridiculous. And what happened to, even the most vehement anti-war people, the Bernie Sanders and the Tulsi Gabbards? That was one thing about them I respected. Now where are they? Tulsi sold out completely. Oh, the Kurds, we're selling them out. And the Kurds aren't all roses and just good people. It's never that simple. For example, there's an organization called the PKK that's sort of a violent revolutionary / terrorist group within the Kurds. They've trained members of Antifa, a domestic terror organization in the United States. Now, does that mean I wish death on all the Kurds? No, I'm not saying that. But the situation, it isn't cut and dry as they believe. Every single time, and Rand Paul has this right, we say, oh, okay, now we need more. We got to meddle more in this situation. Let's meddle more in this foreign situation. And then our meddling results in us needing to meddle even further. If we stop our meddling now, things will get bad. So now we have to meddle further. And on and on. How long have we been in Afghanistan? We'll be coming on 20 years. I mean, it's ridiculous. So everyone that's saying, oh, we're ashamed of Trump, and people are saying, who are they citing? Intel people, military people that are furious? Sure. The same people that Eisenhower warned us about. The military-industrial complex. We're concerned about the Syria-Turkey border. We're not concerned about the U.S.-Mexico border, though, are we, Romney? It's ridiculous. And again, I say, yes, I know that neocon types are for this. We've always known that. But isn't it funny how it turns out the left was just the same? I used to call Obama Bush's third term. Foreign policy-wise, what did Obama do that was different than Bush? All of these people marched against Bush. Bush was a warmonger. Bush lied. People died. Rock against Bush. Bruce Springsteen and all the punk shows I used to go to. Woo, Bush sucks. The war is terrible. And Cindy Sheehan and Michael Moore and all these people. Yeah, the big march against the war. Yeah, our guy Obama came in. Nobel Peace Prize. Woo! And, oh yeah, we're still in Afghanistan. Oh yeah, he's dropping more bombs and droning more people than any president before him. Oh, Libya. Oh, Yemen. Oh, Syria. And they're all okay with it. The left's fine with it. The party of peace. It's a joke. They're not any different. The establishment is all the same. The neocons and the neolibs are the exact same. And the Democrats that used to be anti-war, that even if I disagreed with their socialist policies, at least I could respect their idea of wanting to stop these forever regime change wars. Where are they now? Well, Trump's for it, so they're against it. Bernie and Tulsi and the rest of them. Absolute disgusting. So let's talk about Tulsi while I'm on her. Now, if you watched, I said that I actually really liked Tulsi Gabbard when the Democrat debate started months ago. Her and Yang were the two that I liked the most. Both of them have fallen out of my good graces, and I would never vote for them. Yang for you can't own private car, or private people can't own cars, and we're gonna tax people so that they can't afford to eat meat, and a bunch of other socialist garbage, open borders, crap like that Yang's for. Tulsi's for a lot of that crap too, but she's a hypocrite. The news today is, that I was reading before I came live, Hillary Clinton came out and gave a statement and said she feels that Tulsi Gabbard's being groomed to be a third-party candidate by the Russians. I have to admit, there are days like today that just let me have this for a couple hours. I just want to laugh at all my friends on the left. And I have tons of them. Progressive, socialists. I met a lot of people like that in college. I'm still friends with today. I just want to laugh at them. Because I told them for 3 years now. You're supporting the intel agencies attacking a sitting president just because you don't like that president. If you do this, you do realize that you will never have a real Democratic candidate either. You will only have pre-approved candidates from the intel agencies. They'll use these Russian smears against a progressive. Oh, no, I was told. No. Trump's just a bad dude. It's just Trump. Trump deserves it. Trump really is a Russian stooge. Well, how many anti-war candidates do you have now? Tulsi, supposedly. And what's she being smeared as? Russian stooge by Hillary Clinton. What about Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate? What's she smeared as? A Russian stooge. There you go. Now, here's the truth. I will defend Tulsi's not a Russian stooge. I will defend my friends on the left. If Tulsi would win by some miracle, I wouldn't want a coup against her, like my friends are cheering for the coup against Trump. I would defend my friends on the left and say this is ridiculous. Even if I dislike a president, I'm not going to cheer for the intel agencies to have a coup against them. But that's because I have integrity. And I won't leave my dislike of a specific person ruin who I am and my integrity. But today I'll laugh at them, is what I'll do. I'll laugh at my friends today. I'll work on them, helping them out tomorrow. And they deserve to be mocked. So predictable. You don't even have to have incredible foresight to see that was going to occur. It wasn't even more than a year after the Mueller investigation that we're now seeing this. Of course this was going to happen. Of course. What's Tulsi's big sin? She met with Assad. She wanted peace in the region. She didn't want us to be at Russia's throat. Well, that's unforgivable. She could be the biggest progressive on everything else. Line up totally with Bernie or Elizabeth Warren or Biden, whoever they want. But the Democrats won't have her. Why? Because she advocated for peace. That's the Democrats. That's the party of peace. That's the party that was Bush lies, people died. Being anti-war is now a disqualifier. You're a Russian stooge. That's where they're at. The Women's March, the Scientist March, the Climate Change March, the Antifa people, whatever. All of those people that are morally better than me and you, that are woke, that have all these pet issues. Remember, they're endorsing the party that says if you're anti-war, that's a disqualifier. But they're better than you, man. They care about lives. Just not the ones we're bombing. Just not the ones in Syria. They don't care about them. Why? Well, Democrats need to get rich. Military industrial complex needs to get rich. Intel people need to have more power. That's what these people have sold their souls for. But they'll tell me how they're better than me and I'm a scumbag, you know. I read this woman once. She's a crazy leftist, but she makes a good point. She said she was against Obama, his second term. And she said because she was a feminist, she was told by other feminists, look, you have to vote for Obama because Roe v. Wade, because abortion. And this woman said, but that's kind of a privileged Western way of looking at things. Because you know what else is a woman's right issue? Not having your children bombed to death. Not having yourself bombed to death. But we have to overlook all that because of Roe v. Wade, because of abortion rights. So you have to be for the Democrats. That's what's this woman's take. And even though I disagreed in a lot of what this woman says, there's truth in what she's saying there. You claim to be some kind of morally you have a bleeding heart for people at the border. You have a bleeding heart for, you know, whatever issue. Yet you support the party that says that being anti-war is a disqualifier? You're against Trump wanting to bring our troops home from Syria? You're now the party of the world police. U.S. needs to be the world police. If that's who you are, if you think, hey, I'm for, leaving all these illegal immigrants in and having humane care for them, but I'm also for the U.S. being the policeman of the world and our troops being stationed everywhere and being engaged in these forever regime change wars, you might want to really take a hard look in the mirror. Now, Tulsi herself. I liked Tulsi, but she's a hypocrite. And I actually, I'll kind of be a hypocrite myself here. I'm more angry at her than I am Biden or someone because I know Biden's corrupt. Tulsi seemed to me someone that if she would have won and she's on the left, I could have dealt with. Even with all of her progressive crap. Because I felt deep down she had integrity. And to me, that's when I could disagree with you, but as long as you're not a hypocrite and you have integrity and you actually want to help people out, even if we disagree on what methods we use, do we use a more socialist method? Do we use more capitalist? Whatever. I would rather have someone that I think actually is looking out for the people than someone who agrees with me in the policies, but I know is just a scumbag that doesn't care about people whatsoever. So Tulsi had that for me. Bernie at one point almost had that for me. Though, his third lake house now and his constant hypocrisy. He's driving a sports car yelling about the light bulbs that I use. He doesn't like billionaires, but he's comfortable being a millionaire. He only gives less than 10% of his money to charity for the taxes we see. But yep, we need to all give our money away. So screw Bernie too. But Tulsi, what is the issue with Tulsi? What she at the debate the other night, she called CNN out to their faces for smearing her. For these Russian smears that we now see Hillary Clinton making, right? Tulsi should be an expert in this. She should understand perfectly what's happening. She went over there, she talked to Assad, who's a bad dude, don't get me wrong. But we do that all the time. We should be open to talking to bad people. Peace is more important than that. Stopping the bloodshed's the important thing. So she went over there, she tried that, that's noble, she was good, and she got smeared for that. And she knows that it's garbage. And yet, she supports the impeachment of Trump. What Tulsi's having done to her is 1/10, maybe even less than that, of what's been done to Trump. The same people doing it to both of them. Now, she's smart enough to realize this. She could look over and say, geez, they're smearing Trump as a Russian agent just like they smeared me. But with her, she says, she's self-righteous. How dare they do this to me? They ought to be ashamed of themselves. But I support the impeachment of Donald Trump. Self-serving, disgusting hypocrite. She will never get my vote. Ever. Someone that I supported. If she would win the presidency, I would, no matter who wins, even if I dislike them, I support them in this context of I hope they do great for the country. But I'm absolutely disgusted by her. Absolutely. The same with Jill Stein and all these others. Now, Stein hasn't publicly came out, as far as I know, and supported the impeachment. Where are they defending Trump on this? There are progressives doing this. Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mattei, Jimmy Dore. They hate Trump. They want Trump out for all sorts of reasons. But they're defending him against the Russiagate and the Ukrainegate nonsense. Tulsi could have done the same, but she didn't. Her gut feeling was, she first came out and said, whoa, impeachment. But then she quickly backtracked. And so, although I'll defend Tulsi Gabbard, that's karma. You encouraged a witch hunt and the impeachment of someone that you dislike, and now the same tool is being turned on you, Tulsi. So, your self-righteous moans and cries about it, I don't care at all. Shut your mouth. I'll defend you because I have integrity to be able to defend you. You have none. You're a loser. You sold out to the Democratic establishment that you know is corrupt. You sold out. You knew you weren't going to win this election. You could have came out on top of this 2 or 4 years later and looked so much better. Looked like someone that had integrity, that fought against this, and actually won as a Democrat then, and helped that party become what it should be. A party that actually cares about people, a party that wants to be anti-war, and yes, that does sort of socialistic things that I dislike, but at least I could respect that. But instead, you proved, when the chips are down, when it matters most, you have zero integrity, zero bravery. And that brings me to my next story, the ongoing NBA China saga. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one last thing that's very important that I want to talk about in Syria. Actually, the most important thing on this. Did you see ABC's clip of the bombing in Syria? That actually they took from a gun show in the United States? Trying to make it look as if, oh, look at what Turkey's doing to Syria and to the Kurds now. Now, there's several things to say about this. One is, if the situation's so bad, why do they need to make up footage? Did you see the woman holding her dead baby? Has anyone seen this? There's this Syrian woman, and she's crying, Kurdish, I believe. She's crying, and she's holding her dead baby, and Alyssa Milano retweeted it, and a bunch of celebrities retweeted it, and she's screaming, why, America, why? Only you can see the baby's eyes blinking. So they drugged or put this baby to sleep in some way just for a propaganda video. Just like ABC did. ABC's excuse is, oh, it was just an innocent mistake. They used light filters, they spliced together footage, embellished sound, adjusted the sound on it. That's not a mistake. That's propaganda. Now ask yourself, seriously ask yourself, why do we need fake propaganda if the situation is what we're being told? Why can we look back at almost all of these wars that we've gone into and see other propaganda like that? Like, remember, was it the first Iraq war? You had the girl that was crying, talked about babies being killed in incubators and stuff, and then it turned out she was the opposition politician's daughter, and that it was all made up. Why does the media have to spread these lies if the situation's what they're telling us? I don't have to lie, because I'm just telling the truth. If I had to come in here and make up a video, then that would probably lead you to believe, well, wait a minute, what I'm talking about must not be as strong as what I'm claiming, because I had to manufacture evidence. If the evidence is out there, let's see it. No, we don't have that evidence. We just have the fake evidence. The ABC, whoops, our bad. Went through all those steps and they claim it was just an accident. It's not an accident. It's propaganda. Because they are part of the deep state. Now, I keep saying this. Things like Trump's transcript and this. Where are we going to be as deepfake technology gets more superior? Do you actually think that these people that are right now controlling the public dialogue are beyond using computer technology to make it seem like an individual says something they didn't say? Do you think that's not going to happen? I mean, they're already doing it with more primitive technology right now, like we just saw ABC did. Individuals are smart, but people are dumb as a mass. They'll fall for this crap. And then where are we? Look at the division we have now. All it takes is an anonymous whistleblower closed door meetings Republicans aren't allowed in, and selective leaks coming out from them that convince people. There's still 40 to 50% of Democrats, depending on which poll you're looking at, still believe Trump's a Russian agent. Eric Swalwell still believes that. Adam Schiff still believes that. Despite the Mueller report saying the exact opposite. There was no evidence showing that. So what's going to happen when we actually have the technology to make these things appear like they're happening? It's going to be bad. That's why we need to, as people, start to buttress ourselves against this kind of disinformation. You don't just believe a picture because you see it. You say, okay, I see the picture. Now I'm going to look into the details behind it, or a video, or whatever. You don't just believe something because the media said it, or because someone in the intel agency said it. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely damning. The mainstream media is a joke. You know, when I was on sites like Above Top Secret or other sites, and you'd post a source, let's say you posted True Pundit or Gateway Pundit, people would say, that source sucks, they're wrong all the time. ABC, CBS, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, Daily Beast, BuzzFeed, they're all just as bad, if not worse. Over and over and over. Not just, I got a story wrong. You manufactured evidence. Or like what I talked about earlier with Mulvaney's statement. Mulvaney said the opposite of what you all were quoting him as saying. He said it had nothing to do with Biden. You're all saying, yeah, it had to do with Biden. Mulvaney admits it. So, yeah, moving on to China then, and the lack of integrity. So, I talked about this before, but now LeBron spoke, and don't kid yourself, LeBron is the face of the NBA. James Harden's a phenomenal talent, as is Steph Curry. Popovich and Steve Kerr are outspoken coaches. But LeBron is the voice of the NBA. And right on cue proves what a disgusting hypocrite he is. For those of you that missed the situation, just real quick, GM for the Houston Rockets, Dorsey, tweeted a tweet that was for the Hong Kong protesters. China got furious, started to demand action. The NBA came out and said that voice didn't represent theirs. James Harden came out and said, I love China. Popovich and Steve Kerr basically came out and attacked Trump and said that they weren't informed enough about China to have a statement. And LeBron sort of reiterated that. He said that Dorsey's statement was uneducated and he should have thought of the consequences. That's bad enough, but actually, his clarification is even worse. Because his clarification, LeBron, because people were like, wait, what? You don't know about the situation in China? You don't know the fact that Mao killed 50 million? You don't know that the Uyghur Muslims are interred? Tens of thousands of them in basically concentration camps? You don't know they're using live ammunition on protesters in Hong Kong? You don't know they have a social credit score? They censor people. They have a different internet. They throw journalists in jail. All of this stuff. They're basically everything you complain and make up that's fake about the U.S. actually occurs in China. You didn't know that? And so LeBron clarifies his remarks and he says, no, I wasn't talking about the content. I'll leave that to other people. In other words, I'm not talking about whether or not the Hong Kong protesters should be defended. That's not for me to say. What I was talking about was, He was uneducated on the consequences of how that statement would affect the NBA. In other words, what LeBron said is, no, I was just criticizing this statement because it would hurt me financially and hurt the NBA financially. Does it get more disgusting than that? Now think about this. LeBron James is a man right now with so much money. He could not make one more cent the rest of his life, and he will live like a literal king. He will never be wanting for money again. What he's made already is incredible, the amount of money that he's made. He claims to be a voice for social justice. He speaks out regularly on the topic. Yet he's willing to sell all of his integrity to defend an authoritarian regime in China for just a little more money. This isn't a homeless man who's starving to death that's defending China for money so they could finally eat. This is someone that, needs a third private jet? A 10th sports car? A 5th house? Willing to sell out his integrity for that? This story is bigger than the NBA or China or LeBron. This is the perfect example of what social justice warriors are. They have no bravery. It is the simplest thing in the world to do because they control all of our cultural institutions of power, as I was saying earlier. So there is no risk to you. All the cool people are it, right? The entertainment industry, all the athletes, all the musicians, all the movie stars, all your professors, all the people in the media, all the people in Silicon Valley, they're all cool, hip, leftist, social justice warriors. So even if you're in some right-wing area, and you do social justice-y crap, let's say you work in an oil company and you're a social justice warrior and you go and you protest your own oil company and you get fired. Don't worry, all the cool people got your back. You'll be a hero to them. Your social currency, your likability, your image to all the people that you care about, all the people with power, goes up. There is no risk to that. None. There's a risk in being a Trump supporter. Try to be James Wood. Try to be John Voight in Hollywood and be a Trump supporter. Dean Cain or Kevin Sorbo. There's a huge risk. Because all of your colleagues and all these people in power are against that. So when you hear these social justice people go off and tell you how much better they are, they're going to stop you, right? We got to block traffic for our cause. Screw you. You don't matter. This cause matters. The people we care about matters. You're inhuman. You don't care about the people at the border. You don't care about free health care for everyone. You don't care about the climate. You don't care about trans rights or women's rights. China is worse on all of those, objectively, than the United States. Yet not a peep from them. From these same people that are better than you. And they won't hesitate to tell you. And the loudest voices, those in Hollywood, those in the NBA, they have very strong financial ties to China. That's what the South Park episode was about, Hollywood. Their financial ties to China mean that they do all sorts of crap to capitulate to the authoritarian Chinese government. So while they're back home telling you, you need to treat women better, sexual assaults against women are rampant in Hollywood. While they're back home telling you, you need to treat trans better and you need to care about the environment, they're kowtowing to the government of China. That's worse for all of those. What's up, WZ? Yeah, James Wood. I think Seth MacFarlane, even though he's ideological, he likes James Wood enough that he would bring him back to Family Guy. But that's what this is about. As soon as the chips... And that's true of anything in life. Things only matter when you have skin in the game. the problem I have with socialism in general, right? When you talk about the hypocrisy of Bernie Sanders or Leo DiCaprio, these people are going to fly in private jets. They're going to live in gated communities. They're going to have armed guards while they tell me that I can't have a weapon, that my light bulbs are the problem, or my car is the problem, that I need to accept illegal immigrants into my town and my life. They prescribe policies for the rest of us plebes, us poor to middle class people. We have to deal with all this stuff that they live above, and they judge us from their ivory towers. The policies are what matter. That's what I'm constantly told. Bernie's not a hypocrite. Bernie would pay more in taxes if he had to. Yeah, that makes you a hypocrite. You want the law to force other people to do things that you're unwilling to do yourself, unless it's compelled for you to do it at the point of gun by the government. When the chips are down, when it could cost you personally, how do you act? And we see how the NBA, we see how LeBron chose to act. And that's how many of them would choose. Different rules for them. When it's them financially, it's all good. They deserve their money. Human rights can take a back seat when it comes to their money. But your money, your livelihood, it is some of the most despicable, and it aggravates me to no end. Because I get people that disagree. And what I say is all the time, look, I'm an emotional guy. I like to get heated. I like to get fired up. But when we're talking politics, I'd like to talk about policies. Your policy versus my policy, and who has the better idea for how to do things to make things better. That's the kind of conversation I'm interested in. That's what our government should be about. But predominantly on the left, and some on the right as well, but far and away on the left, people want to make it an issue of morality. Those that disagree with me are morally inferior or morally wrong. And nothing's worse than someone that thinks they're morally superior than you that is a garbage human being. That's the sort of hypocrisy that makes my blood boil. You want to be LeBron James and you say, hey, I don't comment on this crap. It's none of my business. I'm just trying to play basketball and make money. I'm with you 100%. I said, yeah, it's not your place. You know who does a great job of this is Denzel Washington. I've seen repeatedly people say, what do you think about Trump? What do you think about Republicans? He's like, hey, my job's to entertain. That's what I do. I'm not here to talk about this stuff. Fantastic. It doesn't mean you can't have an opinion. Your opinion might be, I don't like Trump. I think he's a bad president. I'm going to endorse a Democrat. That's fine too. But if your opinion is, you're evil for endorsing Trump, or you're evil for wanting the Second Amendment, or you're an immoral or a crappy person, now I'm going to kowtow to the government of China. I have no time of day for you. You're a coward, which is one of the worst insults I could give someone. Better to be ignorant or stupid than be a coward. So, congratulations, LeBron. You're a physical freak. I still enjoy watching you play basketball. Oh, Dib, you're absolutely right about the Christian right. Again, it's not all the Christian right. And let me be clear. It's not every single person in the NBA. Probably the average NBA player doesn't have a lot of star power. They're probably not out there talking about social issues. They're just like, whatever, dude. I'm trying to keep my spot in this team. I'd like my team to make the playoffs. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying. And who was it? There was a player that spoke out for Hong Kong from the Celtics, I believe, a lesser player. But yeah, like, and again, I'm all for free speech. I love, like, people hear me talk about this a lot. I like comedy. Comedy is one of my favorite things. I like video games and comic books. I liked all that stuff in my life at one point. I remember when it was the right coming to censor that, right? Lenny Bruce. Who was it censoring Lenny Bruce? For those of you who don't know, he was a comedian in the 50s. He would get arrested for obscenity because he would make these anti-Catholic jokes. Well, that's who was coming after him. It was the right, the religious right. It was the right that was coming after comic books. You had to have a comic book code. It was the right that came after music. Remember, back in the late 80s, you had Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, that one guy, I think, from Two Live Crew, and John Denver went to Capitol Hill to defend not censoring music. I mean, John Denver with a metal guy and a rap guy, it's hilarious. But that was the right. When I was growing up, I was born in 1984. For me, the big video game systems were, Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and then it went into like the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. Those were the systems I was familiar with. And there was this guy, his name was Jack Thompson. He was on the right, and he was this lawyer that was always suing for violent video games, and we got to censor. And I hated that. I mean, like that was before I was into politics. I remember being in 8th grade, and me and my friends like, screw this guy. What's he doing? Now where's all the censoriousness coming from? It's all the left. They're the ones got to keep these speakers off campus. They're the ones. Video games need to change. They're too misogynist. Comic books need to change. They're too misogynist. Movies need to change. We need to silence this voice. We need to silence that voice. It's all the left now. I was against it when it was on the right. I was vocally against it. I'm vocally against it when it's coming from the left. Hypocrisy on the right is just as disgusting. Like the schadenfreude you'd see when you would have a preacher that would come out against drugs and homosexuality. Then they'd find him with a male prostitute smoking crack. Like that stuff happened. And then they said, oh, forgive me, I sinned. Now, that's the lowest of the low. Whether you're on the right or the left, if you morally judge people for things that you're doing and you forgive yourself for doing, you're a disgusting person. Period. I don't care what your politics are. We see it, I feel, predominantly from the left right now. But the pendulum may swing at some point, and trust me, I will be right there. That's one of the things I don't get. I have all these people on the left. Yeah, they demonize you. They literally demonetize you. They censor you. They're trying to take you off Twitter. They're trying to take you off Facebook, keep you out of campus. They need to control the conversation. I didn't change. I stood with people on the left. I don't care about the political party as much as I care about principles. I don't like racist. I don't like slavery. If the Republicans are for slavery one decade and against it the next, I'm not going to change my opinion on slavery because I'm a Republican. I support gay marriage. I don't care that some Republicans don't. I don't care. I'm for that principle. I'm against these foreign regime change wars. I don't care that sometimes the right's for them. I'm against it. Principles are what matter, not the political party. I am Republican because I feel not the establishment, not the Mitt Romneys, but I feel that at the ground level, at the grassroots level, that's the party that right now best represents me. But I believe in my country and my principles first. And I could be factually wrong at times. In fact, I probably am quite often. I'm human. Everyone's fallible. But I'm not going to judge people for crap that I might... let me give you an example. When I was running for Congress, I was asked... this is unbelievable to me. This is just the kind of stuff that makes you shake your head. So in a room with... I ran for District 12, Pennsylvania special election. And it's... because it was a special election, there weren't primaries and things like that. Instead, you had what was called conferees. And conferees were, people that were handpicked by the Republican Party. And then a group of these conferees would vote for who would ultimately become the Republican nominee. Then you would have a general election. But instead of a primary, we had this conferee process. So a lot of the candidates, myself included, would go to these events where you could talk to different conferees in all of these counties. And at one event, one of the conferee asked about, this was when Ralph Northam was big, and the blackface in his yearbook. And so they were like, is there anything in a yearbook, or have you ever done anything in your life that could be considered embarrassing that, would be used as dirt, if it was dug up, could be used as dirt against you? And I watched people say, no, I've never done anything. That's not true. That's not true. Yes, you have. We've all done embarrassing crap. I certainly have. But here's the thing. I'm consistent. I didn't judge Northam for it. I didn't want every single time, Republican or Democrat. I've been online long enough. Go back and check out my videos. Every single time someone's dug into their past and dug up a quote or something, I've said, I don't think they should lose their job over it. I think it's ridiculous that we're now a culture that are digging into people's past. It's bad for our society. Every single time, Republican or Democrat. My idea of being a person and running for office and just being a person in general is I might be wrong. I might do things that are stupid. But I will never, I'm trying my best not to judge people for the very things that I do myself. Or judge them as irredeemable. Like, because I might say, hey, it was bad when this person did that, and then I do it. Everyone has some amount of hypocrisy. But to claim that you're morally superior to people, there are very few people in this world that I'll claim I'm morally superior than. Murderers, rapists, people that are intentionally doing harm. I tend to think most people, even if they're doing bad things, don't look at it that way. They justify it in some way. But I'm not going to let people tell me that they're morally superior to me, and then the very things they're saying I do wrong. I don't care about minorities. Oh, but the Republican Party's evil. They don't care about minorities. But China, what a great country. How the minorities doing there? Well, they put them in concentration camps, but you know. So, yeah, that was it. The last thing I'll just talk about real quick is the Project Veritas videos. I haven't watched them all, but I like Project Veritas. Now, I will say I do wish that they would release the entirety of their videos, because the one charge that people make against them is it was taken out of context. And they've been doing this for years. But I understand the reason you wouldn't release the full footage, because you're hiding your sources and methods and how you're getting this information in the first place. So if you release the full footage, then everyone that you used to infiltrate that group and the tactics you used would then be outed for everyone to see. So I do take with a grain of salt that some things could be out of context. But some things, like when you hear Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN, blatantly saying, like, look, we're pushing impeachment. What context could there be? I mean, so, you know, it is worth listening to. So I haven't watched all of the videos, but in a nutshell, it just proves what we already knew. And that is that CNN is ideologically biased to the point that they're basically a mouthpiece for the establishment, for the intel agencies. Just like when we had the New York Times, what's the word I'm looking for? Town hall. It wasn't a town hall, but meeting, where the head editor was like, oh, we pushed the Russia thing, and now we got to move on to Trump's a racist. That's not journalism. Journalists don't act like that. Journalists don't make the news. They report the news. And so when you're saying our predetermined outcome is impeachment, now let's report stories to help lead to that. And so good work on Veritas for getting this information out there, because one of the things is I think most of the people here, hopefully, and certainly myself, I could speak for myself, I'm the type of person that's willing to listen to argumentation on what I'm saying, and I could be wrong, and I'm willing to hear people of differing opinions. But many times the people that I'm arguing against, including those that are pro-establishment Democrat, like CNN would be, they demand 100% proof. It was okay that Hillary deleted her subpoenaed evidence because, well, there's this very slight chance that maybe it was all on board, they say. They'll bend over backwards to excuse the... So you would literally, the only way they would ever have accepted Hillary was guilty was Hillary publicly coming out and saying, I'm now admitting I was guilty, I did this terrible thing, blah, blah, blah. That's the only way they would have admitted it. So I mean, to actually, you could say CNN's so biased, they're so terrible. No. So when you could actually say, dude, here's Jeff Zucker in his own words. Here's CNN. Here's one of the things they said, that they don't care about violence in Baltimore or Chicago or Democratic controlled areas. They don't care at all. It's not newsworthy. They can't use it for their agenda. We knew that. All of us, you all watching this, you knew that. But to hear them say it in their own words, it's like, yeah. And the last thing I'll say before I head out about this is, I still have yet to be informed. Why is it that foreign interference, like Russia Times, for example, RT, they had to register as a foreign agency. Supposedly they can influence our elections, or trolls in Russia can influence our elections. Why is it that no one talks about the mainstream media being corrupt and influencing elections? Just because they're stationed in the United States, they can't illegitimately influence elections? Is that what I'm being told? We had that Professor Robert Epstein said Google could sway as many as 15 million votes in the 2020 election. That's not interference we need to be worried about when we can prove that Google's ideologically bent? Or that CNN? Can someone explain to me why that's okay? Oh, domestic election interference, that's fine. It's just foreign trolls. Oh, they use Pokemon Go? Oh, that's unacceptable. They stole the election. I mean, never forget. There were people, some people I think are intelligent people that are my friends that are on the left, that truly believed that 12 Russian trolls using Facebook and Twitter memes and Pokemon Go, half of which wasn't seen till after the election, some of which had to do with being pro-LGBT and Black Lives Matter, that had more of an influence in the election than, say, Google, Facebook, the New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, all being in the bag for the other side. Those 12 trolls were more powerful than that other group. The people said that with a straight face. I mean, that's unbelievable. How do you have a discussion with people that think like that? And just to tie it back to the beginning, it's like that Mulvaney quote that they've been talking about all day. Mulvaney literally says, Biden didn't come up. We talked about withholding aid until they solved corruption, but Biden didn't come up. And the media almost universally took that and said, Mulvaney admits Trump used this for personal benefit. You could see the words in writing and say, no, this doesn't say that. And they believe it does. They believe it does. They look at that. They'll look at that actual phrase and say, no, this is what it says. There were people that legitimately watched Trump say, hey, Russia, if you find those emails, I hope maybe you could send them to us. Clearly a joke. Joking about a very serious thing. The joke was this, by the way, the people that don't get this. The joke was the FBI is so corrupt and, I won't swear, they're so corrupt that they allowed Hillary to delete 30,000 subpoenaed emails and said, well, we can't find them. They're gone now. They're all about yoga, though. No big deal. And so Trump's just like, okay, sure. Maybe Russia will find them for us, because everybody knew Russia and China and all these other places were probably hacking Hillary's private server. Now, everybody knew that this was a joke. Yet, 50% of this country, maybe, had to pretend it wasn't. They were like, oh no, that was serious. That was Trump. Even if you hate Trump, even if you think Trump was a Russian stooge, do you really think he's on national TV colluding with the Russians? I mean, and they would tell you with the straight, I'll talk to people with the straight face. Trump literally went on TV. He literally commanded the Russians to steal the emails on TV. He literally did it. That's what he did. And you just shake your head. You're like, oh my God. I love how the left pretends to not get a joke now. Here's another one, right? The grab him by the P word thing. I know people personally that I've heard joke like that. By the way, I've told crude jokes too. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. If you live in my area of the world, I used to tend bar. You kidding me? You're stuff like that. Women, by the way, as well. Talk crudely in that manner. But I had people that I personally knew had said and done very unethical, like slimy, cheating on people, using women as objects, bragging about it. Now, I myself never did much of that. Not because I'm a better person, because I never was having too much luck with the ladies anyways. And honestly, I'm married now. Everything's good. But honestly, I always had the opposite sense of humor. I always thought the big man talk, whether it was, I hooked up with the hottest chick, or I beat everyone up at this party, I always just kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, okay, dude. My jokes were always like, yeah, I went to this party and found the smallest dude there and just started with him. And yeah, he just whooped me because I'm kind of just making fun of the tough guy attitude. Anyways, but I knew people that did that stuff. And then they had to pretend years later, I'm outraged with what Trump said. This is outrageous. He should be removed. And for someone to talk that way about women, and I'm just looking at these people like, do you forget all the times we were at the bar and you did just that? You said just as bad as what he said, if not worse. But people get so into the theatrics that they suspend reality. They pretend, they actually believe, I'm outraged by what Trump said. Normal humans wouldn't say that. It's like, dude, you said that. Oh, well, that was different. I just said it in private. Yeah, so Trump. Now all of a sudden we have to pretend like that type of talk doesn't go on or jokes don't occur. We have to just pretend. And it's stupid. I get it. You hate Trump. I didn't like Obama. I didn't lose my sense of humor. I didn't lose my integrity. I didn't cheer for a military coup, an intelligence agency coup against him. So, and that's one of the things I try to tell. I know most of my audience is probably Trump supporters, which is fine. But I do try, I think you could be a very reasonable person and not like Trump. That's fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're a terrible person. I mean, it doesn't at all mean you're a terrible person. If you're cheering for a coup or something, you're making a huge mistake. But if you're like, I don't like his policies, right? I think he talks, his tweets and stuff, I don't like his mannerisms, I don't like his demeanor. That's fine. But don't sacrifice your integrity because you don't like the guy. Don't cheer for even worse people in a coup, cheering for the intel agencies because you don't like the guy. Trump's 4 to 8 years. The intel agencies forever. You give them this power, and that's it. Your election doesn't mean anything. You complain about, all these people on the left, they complain about voter ID, which is nonsense. Voter ID is a good thing, I think. Though I have heard at least one of friends of mine that for other reasons is against voter ID. Not because he thinks that it diminishes minority votes, though. But anyways, there'll be a bunch of these people on the left are against voter ID because they think it suppresses the vote. Yet they're for basically the coup from the intel agencies. What do you think that suppresses your vote more? That suppresses everyone's vote. If unelected bureaucrats in the intel agencies, like Chuck Schumer said, are so strong that even the president, the most powerful elected official, has to be fearful of them, then what does your vote matter? You'll only get pre-approved candidates from the intel agency. That's what you'll get. So you better hope the intel agencies agree with whatever your issues are, because that's your only choices. So, and I keep saying I'll finish up, but this is the last thing I'll say. I'm sick and tired. Where are the Republicans, by the way? I get the corrupt Romneys and whatever. If you're watching this, if you're in my district, Glenn, where you at? I'm District 15, District 12. Fred Keller beat me. He's the one who won the election. Where are you, Fred? I haven't seen you on TV defending the president. Seen Dan Mouncer, who's someone I met who's an awesome congressman. Saw him defending the president on Twitter, on TV, trying to go to meetings, being told he couldn't attend the meetings. That's a patriot. That's a real Republican. But where are the rest of these people? I call their offices. I tell them I'd like to help them. I tell them it would be important to defend Trump. But I don't hear anything back. What good are you? Why are we voting you in? What are you doing in Congress? Did you pass any? You're in the minority. Nothing you want passed is going to get passed anyways. So why aren't you using your position to go out and defend not just our president, but actually our system of governance from a coup? Why aren't you out there defending vocally every day? What are you working on that's more important? Call your congressman. Let them know that this is important. They're just sitting on the fence. Many of them just want the job. They don't want to stick their neck out. Remember what I said earlier? When the chips are down, that's when it matters. So as it's going now, as someone who's, still never made over $15 an hour my entire life, I am not a man of wealth by any stretch, but I do believe I will be running for Congress again in 2022 because I'm fed up with it. If I won that election in District 12, I'd have been on television every day. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, be getting interviewed for the New York Times, for the Washington Post. I don't care. I would be out there every day condemning this coup. There's no excuse. And trust me, I have policy ideas as well. I'm not just a one-trick pony. But that's certainly the most important thing. So, look for me to run in 2022. Woo! And have a difficult time, because if I've learned one thing, it's hard to be a person basically on your own. I had a good friend of mine who was a Democrat be my campaign manager, and my wife. That's it. 3 of us. Spent thousands of dollars that I shouldn't have trying to run. So, I'll be back in 2022. I would do it in 2020, but I don't think I have enough time to run a campaign. But I got more people behind me now, and I think that I'll be all right. And I'm not just saying this because I want to win. It's not that. People will say to me, oh, what you do is you run for a lower office, right? Get something in your town, then maybe state level. Then you run for Congress. I don't have anything to bring to my town office or the state level. I'm not going to run for a position just to get a position. I'm going to run because I think I can make a difference for the country or for the town or the state. And you should run if you're in it, or, we need more regular people that aren't in it just for $1 or for, the prestige, that actually care about people. That aren't going to go to Washington and hang around with a bunch of people in limos and forget what the people back home are about, what their lives are about. So, that's why I'll be running. And that's why I wish more people would run. Republican or Democrat, I don't care. Like I said, my campaign manager was a Democrat. He knew I actually cared about people, though. So even though we might have disagreed in some issues, he still supported me. And so that's where I'll be. But if this coup goes through, one way or the other, if it goes through, I don't know that we'll ever get a chance to out the corruption like we have now. But I'll still be trying. So, well, thanks everyone for listening. I'm probably going to do a live stream tomorrow at some time. Though it'd probably be around noon if I do it. And then I am going to be putting up a video tonight about the Ukraine. It won't be live, but my top 5 things that are wrong with the Ukraine coup. So look for that tonight. Please, if you can, recommend me to some other people. I would really appreciate it. And if you haven't, like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter as well. Look, it's important to support independent people. And if any of you have a channel and you would like my support, please let me know. I'd be happy to go on your channel and talk to you, or to give you a mention on my show. I don't have a ton of people watching, but, I would be happy for that. And I'm going to put my email out there. I know a couple people suggested maybe some other people that would like to talk to me. I would love to get in contact with other people, other channels. I'll be doing more live streams with my friend Drone Tech. He has a bigger channel, so I'll be doing that in the future as well. So thank you, though, everyone, for your support, and have a good one.